Hi, I'm Laurie.
Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome to Valley View Retreat, our wonderful home here in the Sierra de las Nieves mountains. We moved to this wonderful 4-acre finca in 2004, and we've been living off-grid in our modified geodesic dome since then. Welcome to the channel.
Welcome.
In this week's video, we're going to introduce you to some nighttime visitors that we get. Very scary thing. We're going to show you our, what have we been doing this morning?
We've been making hay for
While the sun shines.
for our for our compost.
And we've been clearing some of the wildflowers and overgrowth around both the tiny house and the dome because it's the start of our fire season, and we'll talk about that later. But the main thing in today's video is going to be shout outs. We really appreciate the fact that so many of you watch our videos. I think we're up to about somewhere in around about 350 subscribers at the moment.
Thank
And
you.
of that 350 subscribers, there are a core of people, about 120 or 130 of them, who seem to have watched most of our videos. And I can only assume that that's because they have a great interest in the subject of homesteading or retiring to Spain or DIY stuff or something to do with bicycles and mountains or whatever. And what we'd like to do is to share with those people who are that interested some of the channels that we actually watch and that we find useful. And the ones that we've actually chosen are the ones that have a relatively small number of subscribers. Obviously, the ones that have hundreds of thousands of subscribers you will have already found because they're everywhere on YouTube. So these are the ones that we would follow and the ones that would have an interest for us, and hopefully they'll have an interest for you as well. So the first thing we'll do is go back to the shout out that we did last week, which was for the Spanish Homestead.
Right.
And that's Andy and Katie.
Katie, yeah.
And they are north of us, a good deal north of us, up more towards Alicante. And the type of homestead that they have has animals, and they do semi-commercial food production. So if that's your thing and you're into keeping animals and homesteads, they're a fantastic resource. And they've got loads of videos on their market gardening and on their animals, and they're a really cute couple, and definitely go and visit them. It's the Spanish Homestead. There'll be a link in the description down below.
I was going to say, even if you're not interested in animals, it's still really good to watch. It's really good viewing. So it's good too.
Now, also, going outside of Spain, people homestead all over the world. And one of the channels that we follow is New Beginnings, My Everyday Life in Cyprus. And this is a wonderful couple who have retired out to Cyprus. They're Dawn and Mike, and they have a channel each. Dawn's channel is the New Beginnings channel, and she covers some amazing techniques for no-dig growing and producing vegetables, like hugel beds and root stout beds and things like that. Well worth looking at. And she goes into great detail and shows you not only how to make them, but also how much they actually produce. And she's been doing it long enough for you to be able to see exactly how well they're performing over a long period of time.
It's great as well for looking at being on a low budget as well, sourcing your own foods.
Unfortunately, Dawn and Mike have had a tough time over the last while, and they are seriously into frugal living through necessity. Mike's channel is the Olive Farmer Treat. Again, I'll link that down below. And Mike is a retired engineer, so his DIY skills are pretty astounding. And in terms of frugal living, he's built a rocket stove and put that video up, and it's gone pretty much what we term viral. I mean, nearly 70,000 views on that. Again, well worth watching, and they're a lovely couple.
They are.
Again, links down below. Okay, so again, north of us, Finca Life is the next channel. And Finca Life, that's Andy and Sharon.
Yeah.
And they've bought a finca which had an old warehouse on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're converting the warehouse into a home and also into a flat that they can rent out.
Looks huge.
It looks huge, yeah, and it's a really, really big project. They're also trying to be as self-sufficient as possible, and where they live, it's very, very dry, and they get cold winters, unlike us here. So they're having to be very innovative in the way that they're actually doing their planting, and they're trying some they're trying some techniques that I haven't actually seen before, like trenching and filling with compost and stuff like that. And it's well worth a watch and follow their progress, and it may be something there that would be of use to you. And Sharon is doing most of that. Andy is extraordinarily handy. We call him Handy Andy. And he's got every tool under the sun. More importantly, he's a man that knows how to use his tools. So he's done some extraordinary work in their their warehouse, which they're converting, down to making his own doors and windows. And they're completely off grid. They're solar, and they do their rainwater harvesting and the various systems and cisterns for storing water and all of that. Well worth a watch. And they haven't been going that long, so it's a good place to start.
Yeah.
You can catch up with their videos very, very quickly.
It's just great to see how other people are doing kind of like similar things to you, but just a different aspect of looking at it, and also with the environment that they're in as well. That all influences it as well.
So they're still in Spain, but Spain is a huge country, and we've got a lot of different climate zones.
Yeah.
And theirs is different to ours, and different to the Spanish Homestead, to the other Andy and Katie's. So they're applying different techniques.
Yeah.
That takes us to Smithsdale Farm. And Smithsdale's Farm, these are a young couple who've been living in Barcelona for a few years.
Lovely watching them. Lovely.
They've been apartment living for that length of time, and obviously, through lockdown and everything else. And they've made a decision that they want to be mortgage free and as self-sufficient as possible. Yeah. And they're much further north than us in Spain. That's where they're actually looking for a homestead for themselves. And they started not that long ago. They don't have a huge number of videos up, but they're very meticulous in the way that they've actually charted their progress, from laying down the criteria that they needed to look at various pieces of land, what each piece of land would need to have in order for it to be right for them, and very strict on their budget and whatever. And they've gone through the process now of looking at a whole heap of places. They've bought a place, and they go into great detail about the compromises that they made and why they made those compromises. And they've started to build, and theirs is a room. So it was originally a house that hasn't been occupied for a long time, and they're literally building that rebuilding that from scratch. And they're trying to make the land as productive as possible. As I say, they're very, very meticulous about the things they do, and they're young and dynamic, and their planning is absolutely perfect.
I love that.
And if you were ever thinking, if you're relatively young, somewhere between 20 and 50 or so, and you were thinking of homesteading in Spain or a foreign country, the way that they actually went about it is it's like a blueprint for how it should be done.
Yeah.
They've already a very clear idea of their various income streams, how they're going to support themselves right from the very beginning, the whole way through. And they're a lovely couple and a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think if we were starting a YouTube channel, and if YouTube was the way it was when we were starting the Dome, that is the way we would have been starting it. I could see us two in Danny and Katie back then when we were just starting. So I really do relate with them, and it's really a pleasure to watch their videos, their channel. Yeah.
So Danny and Kate's channel is the Smithsdale Farm, and it's linked down below as well. So we're going to show you the video of the things that we talked about earlier on, and then we'll come back to you. This spot is about 15 meters behind our shed, which means it's about 35 meters from the dome. And you can see that here under the trees we've got some fabulous topsoil, ideal to mix with our compost for our seedlings. But digging this is a complete pain in the neck. However, we don't have to dig it. In the night, not every night, but some nights, we have little helpers that come and dig all of this topsoil up and take most of the roots out of it, and also leave us some fertilizer. We live in an area which has a reasonable population of wild boar, and the wild boar every so often will come onto our land, and because these are almond trees and you get nuts that actually fall, they'll root around looking for the buried almond nuts and loosen up all the soil, leave us some fertilizer, and then completely disappear the next morning. I mean, free help in the garden. What more could you ask for? I know that some people, you know, if you live somewhere where you've got beautiful lawns or whatever, may find that wild boar are a bit of an irritant. But for us, they're daddy's little helpers. Hi, today is the 1st of May, and in this part of the world, the 1st of May is like the first day of summer or the start of summer. But the other thing that happens on the 1st of May is that it's the beginning of our fire alert, our bushfire alert season, which means that it's very important that we keep all of the land around the house low to the ground, so that if a fire does pass through, that you're not giving it fuel to burn and burn your house down. And fires here are a very regular occurrence during the summer. So we've enjoyed our wonderful spring flowers now for a few months, and now it's time to actually take them down. In order to do that, we use this petrol strimmer, and when you're using the petrol strimmer, all along the paths and anywhere that I need to clear the very high stuff out of the way, I use this string that you can see on the end, and I cut them in layers. So on the very high weeds and flowers, I cut them off about a third of the way, then do another third, and then do the bottom third. And the reason I do that with the strimmer is that if you try and cut them off at the bottom, the lengths of the weeds are so long that they can actually bind up in the spinning head, and it means that you're stopping every 10 minutes or so to clear the head before you actually go. The downside of that is that it doesn't make for great hay. What you end up with is just tiny little bits scattered all over the place. So once the paths and that are done, we pick a flattish area, and here we have this little meadow in front of the tiny house, and then I put a blade on this and I cut it as low to the ground as possible in order to leave me with decent lengths that we can then gather into mounds and dry, and use that hay later on for either hugel beds or for root stout beds, or for putting around plants as mulch. And that's what we're up to today. Okay. this little meadow used to be our garden, our vegetable garden, and it was here when we had a house up where the tiny house is now. And if you want to know why we were living in that house and not in the dome, I'll link there'll be a card up here which will link you to the video, which will tell you about the catastrophe we had with the dome after a couple of years, and why we were up here. But because this was our kitchen garden, it worked really well for a year or so. But then it started to become very unproductive. Stuff would grow, and then it would fail before it reached full maturity. So we were stuck with a situation where we needed to either import water all of the time for it, and some sort of fertilizer, or just buy the food that we actually needed. And in the end, because we were working, that's what we decided to do. But obviously, all of the work that went into this did actually pay off, in that every weed in the universe actually grows perfectly here now. But the good news is that it does actually provide us with mulch and compost and material for growing with no dig beds, which we're about to try in the very near future, and we'll have videos on that. Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed watching us working hard while you were just sitting there watching your screen. Another shout out, and this is for Sean, and Sean runs a channel called Expat in Patron, and he's again north of us, somewhere between here and Alicante. He's retired with his wife out here. They sold up in the UK and moved out about 5 years ago, and he runs that channel, and it's mainly information. It's information about living in Spain, about lifestyles, about retiring into Spain, and he does interviews with other people who've actually moved out. And if it was something that you were thinking about at some stage in the future, moving out, he's a great man to watch and a great man to hit up. If you've got a question, ask him. He's usually got an answer. His channel is Expat in Patron, and it's linked down below. Okay, those are our shout outs for channels. And now we've got a big thank yous to do. So the first big thank you is for Slow Gomera. And Slow Gomera knows who he is. Even if you don't, he knows who he is. And he was the person who very early on turned us on to moringa trees. Yeah. And gave us some information. I didn't know what moringa trees were, and then
never heard of them.
Never heard of them. We did some research, and we became very, very excited about the whole thing. Yeah. And it's become a project that we'll be talking a lot more about later on. But he was the one that turned us on to that, and not only did he do that, he actually sent us some seeds from his own trees. Both not just moringa trees, but moringa trees, patanga trees, wild tomato, chili, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate that.
Thank you.
We've started to propagate those already, and we'll be keeping you informed about that. So thank you so much, Slow Gomera. You know who you are. And the next one is Sonny. Sonny is our first patron. Our first subscriber on Patreon. Why he subscribed to us, I don't know. We're not even finished with our page yet, but we are getting there, and we're putting stuff up, and it will be worthwhile. It will be worth the time and the effort, and even a little financial subscription for that. We'll make it as good as we possibly can. But meanwhile, thank you so much, Sonny.
Thank you,
really,
Sonny.
Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. So next week, what are we going to be doing next week?
Oh gosh, aren't we making the beds down at the bottom for the moringa trees, or?
It may be something to do. It may be something to do.
We've got a lot to do. We've got a lot to do. We've just got to work out what to do next, because obviously you saw what we were doing this morning. So then it's just planning what to do next, and I'm also clearing up there still as well.
So it looks like it's going to be a surprise for anybody who has subscribed to us on Patreon, which is that one person, Sonny. we'll be doing updates every couple of days
Yeah.
and putting videos, and
Yeah,
we're
so be
also
sure to
in
check it
the
out.
midst of putting up complete biographies,
Yeah, so you get to know more about us.
whether you like it or
Or
not.
not.
And blogs and bits and pieces, and some
Yeah.
funny stuff as well.
Oh.
So if you
Yeah.
get a chance, go and have a look. There's a
Yeah.
couple of benefits there. Might be something that you're interested in. If not, it's okay. Just keep
Yeah,
going back to the channel and keep
absolutely.
watching.
Absolutely.
Now is the time to subscribe. Hit the buttons down below. Like and subscribe. It costs nothing and it really does help us out. We catch you next week. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Watch those channels.
Yeah.
Subscribe.